In general, there are two types of student loans, federal and private. Federal loans get consolidated together, private loans get consolidated together. They do not mingle. Consolidating student loans, it's gotten a little easier in the last year and a half, but for a while it was actually fairly difficult because those big banks that we talked about that were in trouble, those are the ones that typically are doing the lending for the consolidating, and they just were hoarding their money and not lending it out, so it made it difficult to do a student loan consolidation. Like Sallie Mae is they tend to be one of the larger student loan consolidations. Your federal will all be consolidated together. This is not going to be as difficult as you think, at least initially, because when you graduate, and right before and maybe already, you're going to be bombarded with junk mail about consolidate your student loan, call us to consolidate your student loan. You need to pick 3 or 4 of those and you need to call them. And you need to say, let's pull up my account, see how many student loans that I have, tell me what you would consolidate them for, what interest rate would you give me. And do not make a decision right there on the spot over the phone. Call 3 or 4 more and figure out what they'll give me. And then call one of them back and say, well, they told me they'd give 5%, so if you can't do better than 5%, then I'm going to go with them. And because you'll have a little bit of the negotiating power when it comes to that, a little. Because that environment is getting better. The interest on your student loans, you'll get a 1099 in the mail for. It is tax deductible. So as long as you don't make over, I think it's $56,000 for a single person and like $80,000 for a married couple. So it is tax deductible up to a certain point. So you'll get a 1099 in the mail to be able to report that on your taxes and get a tax deduction. But as far as consolidating student loans, the financial aid office, again, great resource. The other thing I would tell you to do is challenge some of those consolidation companies by calling multiple and getting quotes from more than one. Once you figure out which one you're going to go with and you consolidate the student loans, 6 months after you graduate, your first student loan payment is due. If you go back to school, your payments will be deferred while you're still in school. Don't just assume that they're going to be deferred, however. You need to call and tell your student loan people that you are enrolling in school. They should know that. But when you get that bill in the mail and you don't pay it, and you're like, I don't have to pay that. That guy told me I'm in school, so that's no big deal. Well, if they don't know that you're in school, and then your bills start and you refuse to pay them, the back process of fixing all that is going to be much more difficult than calling the Stafford people ahead of time and telling them, hey, I am enrolled in law school. I want to make sure that you know that so that these are deferred, and they're going to say, we need a copy of your enrollment or transcript or whatever to make sure. So if you're going back into school, make sure that your student loan people know that.
Did you have to be back to school full-time or 44, or
it will depend from student loan to student. It's going to depend. What they're going to ask you for is your income. You're going to say, well, I go to school half the time. And they're going to say, well, how much money do you make? And you say $240,000. And they're going to go, you need to pay these. So it's going to depend on where you're at. The other thing is, and again, I tell you from personal experience, when I got out of school, 6 months later, my student loans were ready to begin. I called and put them in deferment for another year. I was starting a business. I had startup costs. I did not have a lot of money, and I certainly didn't have the $400 a month that they wanted for my student loan payment. So I called and put the student loans in deferment for a full year while I got the business up and running and off the ground. The loan still accumulated interest as if I was supposed to be paying them, but the payments were not due for a full year. So depending on your income, you can do a hardship deferment, and they'll usually either do 6 months and allow you to renew it for another 6. After a full year, however, they're going to really start wanting money if you're not in school. So it's just one thing to keep in mind.